Hi, my name's Helen Sharp and I run the knitting school in Seattle. Today I'm going to be talking about making a tension swatch or gauge swatch. So this is something you do before you start a garment, and all of your calculations for your garment are going to be based off of that swatch. First of all, you're going to make your swatch in the yarn and stitch that your final garment will be in. If you have different stitches in your garments, for example, the sleeves are a different stitch to the body, you will do a swatch for each fabric, and you will also do a swatch for a rib start. So if you're starting with a 2x2 rib or something, you would do a swatch for that as well. An error in your tension swatch is going to be magnified in your garment, so it's kind of important to make it as accurate as possible. From your swatch, you can figure out how many rows and needles equal 1 inch, and then from that you can figure out how many rows and needles go into your garment pieces. It needs to be big enough to get an accurate read, at least 6 inches by 6 inches, and even bigger if you can afford the yarn. Unless you're very familiar with your yarn and the stitch you're using, you'll probably want to start doing tension swatches like this. So here I've got 3 slightly different tensions, tension 8, 9, and 10. Here I've used stickers to indicate the tension, and here I've used pointel holes, so 8 holes for tension 8, 9 for tension 9. This is definitely more useful because there's no chance of losing that information. And then I'll treat this swatch as I will be doing for the tension swatch, the main tension swatch, and the finished garment. In other words, I'll take it off the machine, I'll let it relax, and then I'll either wash it or steam it according to the yarn. And then I'll just assess it for hand feel and tension before I decide which one I like the best for my garment. So when I make my final swatch, what I'll end up with is a tension swatch at least 6 inches wide. So it might be about 50 needles wide on the machine. And then I'll cast on with a finished cast on edge, knit about 1 inch, then put in a contrast stripe. And then I'll do between here, I might do 100 courses or rows, or 50, some round number, contrast stripe, another inch, and then bind off. So this swatch here has been knit 60 needles wide and 100 courses between 2 contrast color stripes. The swatch has been rested, washed, and steamed. And so now I'm ready to calculate how many courses or rows are in 1 inch and how many needles or stitches are in 1 inch. So for the courses, I'm going to measure between the 2 contrast color stripes. I'm going to measure in the middle of the swatch because the ends will be slightly different. So I've got 9.75 inches equals 100 courses. So to figure out how many courses are in 1 inch, I'm going to take that 100 divided by 9.75 equals 10.25. So I tend to keep this to 2 decimal points at this stage. I know you can't knit a quarter of a row, but those quarters add up over the length of a garment. And so I'm going to leave them in and then round them off after I've done my calculations. To calculate stitches or needles, I need to count across. And I'm going to just count in the center of the fabric. The stitches tend to be a little bit more squished together on the edge. So I'm going to just put a pin in here. And then I'm going to lay the ruler down. And we know that a knit stitch is like a series of V's on jersey, which is what this is. So I've got my pin on the edge of one V, and I want to look across the fabric maybe to about 4 inches. This one kind of goes halfway down a stitch. So I'm going to go out to 5 here. So I'm going to put a pin in right there. And so that's on the other side of another V stitch. And now I'm going to count how many stitches there are between those two. And I usually count in groups of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the reason I do it like this is because your eyes go a little bit crazy counting those tiny V's. And if you put a pin every 10, you don't have to start all over again if you lose your place. So now I can see that there's 10, 20, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 36 stitches equals 5 inches. 36 divided by 5 equals 7.2 needles. So now I have my inch gauge for this fabric, this yarn, at this tension. And from that I can do all of my garment calculations. Last step would be to put a label on the swatch to record what the correct tension is per inch, and then keep your tension swatch, because if you're like me, you'll use the same yarn over and over again, and then you don't have to go through that process each time.